Today, we're diving into the mind of a philosopher who took one simple, logical rule and followed it to a conclusion so shocking it basically breaks reality. A conclusion that says everything you experience, change, movement, even the fact that you're a separate person from the screen you're watching right now, is all a complete and total illusion.
So let me just ask you something right off the bat. Can you really trust your senses? I mean, think about it. Every single day, the reality your senses report back to you is completely different from the reality someone else is experiencing.
You know how it is, you think a pizza is perfect, your friend says it's way too salty. You walk into a room and you're sweating, but they're shivering. You're watching a game and you see a clear penalty, they're screaming that the player took a dive. We just call these opinions, right? It's all subjective. We argue about it, we laugh, and we move on.
But what if that's not all it is? For an ancient Greek thinker, back around 500 BC, this wasn't just a simple disagreement. He saw these constant contradictions as proof of something much, much bigger, a fundamental glitch in reality itself. He believed our senses were basically feeding us a stream of junk data, hiding a much deeper, unshakable truth.
The philosopher's name was Parmenides, and in his incredible poem, On Nature, he lays out this epic journey where a goddess reveals a fundamental choice every one of us has to make between two very different paths, the path of opinion and the path of truth. So the poem kicks off with Parmenides on this mythical chariot, being guided by the daughters of the sun themselves. They travel to this massive gate that separates the realms of day and night. And there, a goddess of justice meets him and offers to reveal, and this is a quote, the unshaken heart of well-rounded truth. But to get there, he first has to understand these two paths of knowledge.
The first path is called doxa, which is just the Greek word for opinion. This is the path we are all on, every single day. It's the reality that's based entirely on what our senses tell us, what we see, hear, taste, and touch. It's the world that seems real to us, full of constant change, lots of different things, birth and death. But according to the goddess, this path, it's a dead end. It's an illusion.
Then you have the second path, aletheia, the path of truth. Now, this path completely ignores the messy, unreliable data from our senses. Instead, it relies on one thing and one thing only, pure, rock-solid reason, or as the Greeks called it, logos. This is the path of pure logic, and the goddess promises that this path, and only this path, can lead you to understand what truly is.
So the choice she presents is pretty stark, right? Do you trust your senses, which are constantly contradicting themselves and everyone else, or do you trust pure logic, which is certain and unwavering? For Parmenides, the answer was a no-brainer. He went all in on the path of reason.
So, what did he find down this path? What's the big secret? Well, Parmenides built his entire understanding of reality on one single foundational rule. A statement so simple it seems almost impossible to argue with. And it's the launch pad for everything that comes next. Okay, here it is. What is and cannot not be. What is not and cannot be. Let that sink in for a second. It basically means whatever exists, exists. And whatever doesn't exist, like pure nothingness, well, it doesn't.
To put it even more simply, nothingness is not a thing. It doesn't actually exist. You can't even truly think about pure nothing, because the moment you try to picture it or define it, it becomes a something in your mind. And this leads to a huge conclusion. You can't get something from nothing, and something can't just vanish into nothing. Seems pretty obvious, right? Almost like he's just stating a fact.
But this is where things get really, really weird. Parmenides took this one simple, logical rule and followed it all the way to its absolute end. And this is where our reality, the one our senses report to us, starts to completely fall apart. All right, you ready? Let's follow the breadcrumbs of his logic and see how he systematically dismantles everything we think is real, all based on that one little rule.
Okay, consequence number one. True reality, which he just calls being, has to be eternal, no beginning and no end.
Just think it through with me. If being or reality had a beginning, what did it come from? The only possible answer is that it came from non-being, from nothingness. But wait, we just established with our core rule that nothingness doesn't exist. It can't be the source of anything. So, being was never created. And by that same logic, it can never be destroyed, because to be destroyed would mean turning into non-being, which is impossible. So bottom line, being has always been here, and it always will be.
All right, stick with me because this is where it gets even stranger. Consequence number two.
True reality is completely still, immobile, unchanging. All that movement and change you see around you every second of every day? Nope, all an illusion.
Here's his logic. For something to move, it has to move into an empty space, right? From point A to point B. But what is an empty space? It's a place where there is no thing. It's non-being. And our number one rule says non-being doesn't exist. There are no empty spaces for things to move into. Therefore, movement is logically impossible. And any kind of change is really just another form of movement, changing from one state to another. Also impossible.
And here we go. This is the big one. The final, mind-bending conclusion. Consequence number 3. True reality is one single, unified, indivisible thing.
Think about yourself and the screen you're looking at right now. Your senses are screaming at you that you are two separate things. But what actually separates you? What's in the space between you and the screen? According to Parmenides' logic, the only thing that could truly separate one piece of being from another piece of being is non-being, a gap. But we know the rule. Non-being doesn't exist. There are no gaps, which can only mean one thing. You, the screen, the air, the room, me, the entire universe. It's all just one seamless, unified, single entity.
So what on earth does this eternal, unmoving, unified whole even look like? Well, the goddess in Parmenides' poem gives us this beautiful, powerful image. She calls it the unshaken heart of well-rounded truth, which leads him to his final brilliant analogy.
He compares being to a perfect sphere. Now, this might sound weird to us because we think of infinite as perfect, right? Limitless. But for the ancient Greeks, it was the total opposite. Infinite meant unfinished or incomplete. Finite meant it was perfect. And a sphere is the ultimate example of perfection. It's complete. Every single point on its surface is exactly the same as every other. And, this is key, nothing exists outside of it. It's a perfect, closed, eternal system.
You can just imagine the shockwaves this sent through the ancient world. Here's a guy who, using what seems like flawless logic, presents a vision of reality that is the complete opposite of what people experience every single day. His reasoning was so tight, so rigorous that you couldn't just ignore it. You had to deal with it.
And that is his incredible legacy. Parmenides basically invented a whole field of philosophy called ontology, the study of being itself. He was the first person to really argue that pure deductive logic, not our senses, was the only tool we have to understand what's real. And in doing so, he created this huge paradox that has haunted philosophy ever since. What do you do when pure reason and your own experience are in a total war with each other? Every major philosopher after him, guys like Plato and Aristotle, had to wrestle with his arguments. It's why Plato, who deeply respected him, also called him venerable and terrible. Terrible because his logic was so powerful it could just obliterate the world you thought you knew.
So, we end right back where we started, with that choice. The path of the senses tells you that you are you, living in a world full of movement, change, and countless different things. But the path of reason tells you that's all a grand illusion, and that in reality, you are just one tiny part of a single, eternal, unchanging whole. Parmenides made his choice. The real question is, which path do you believe?
If a question made you stop and think, take one more second. Philosophy doesn't give easy answers, it teaches you how to ask better questions. Like the video if you enjoy thinking. Follow Philosophy LM and keep searching together.